Of all the women Ethan Hayes ever dated, I was the good one. But in bed, I was the wild one. He hated condoms, so I never kept them in my nightstand. He complained that I was too reserved, so I learned every trick in the book. His friends would talk, their voices a low murmur of expensive whiskey and disbelief. I don't get it. Audrey seems so vanilla. And you're saying behind closed doors she's a total freak? Ethan, my man, going raw is one hell of a rush. But what if she gets pregnant? She'll lock you down with a kid before you can even call your lawyer. Ethan would just take a slow drag from his cigarette, a smirk playing on his lips. She wouldn't dare, he'd say, exhaling a plume of smoke. Her family's old school conservative, and the Hayes family would never, ever accept a child born out of wedlock. And he was right. A good girl would never do something as disgraceful as getting pregnant before marriage. Which is why, before we ever touched, I always made sure Ethan took his pill. I'll admit, male birth control isn't exactly easy to get your hands on. I had to pull a few strings, calling in a major favor from my best friend. Zoe told me the drug was incredibly effective, but she also warned me that long-term use could cause irreversible damage to a man's sexual function. She shot me a worried look over her wine glass. Audrey, if you're really that concerned about your man's equipment, my firm is developing a new version with fewer side effects. It's just not out of trials yet. I offered her a tight smile and promised I'd wait. What I was really thinking was, what the hell did I care about Ethan Hayes' equipment? The alternative was me alone in a sterile clinic, waiting for an abortion. The thought of it was too bleak to bear. And since Zoe's miracle drug was stuck in development, I kept using the one I had for 6 months. Every time, just before things got heated, I'd tell Ethan it was a vitamin, watching him swallow it with a glass of water before I let him unbutton my shirt. I'll give him this, he was right about one thing. Without that thin layer of latex, the feeling was infinitely better. He got his pleasure, and I, bearing none of the risk, got even more. Ethan was, in his own way, a fool. He genuinely believed I was so hopelessly in love with him that I'd do anything he asked. As a reward for my devotion, he'd shower me with lavish gifts, a Patek Philippe watch one week, a Cartier diamond necklace the next, followed by a brand new Porsche. Anything I could sell, I sold the very next day, funneling the money into a diversified investment portfolio. To keep up appearances, I bought flawless replicas to store in my closet. He never paid attention to the details. He never noticed a thing. Back in the VIP lounge, the conversation was still flowing. Seriously, man, you've had her on a string for years. Aren't you ever going to make it official? Come on, you know the deal. Audrey's got a clean background, but she's not exactly in the same league as the Hayes family. Then one of his drunker, more obnoxious friends piped up, his words slurring. Hey Ethan, when you get tired of her, you mind if I take a turn? He leered. Audrey's got that innocent look, but a killer body. I'd kill to get a piece of that. Bet she's absolutely filthy in bed. A sudden sharp silence fell over the table. The air crackled. The guy who'd just spoken seemed to sober up instantly, his face paling. He started stammering, practically slapping himself. Shit, man, I'm sorry. I'm drunk. I was just talking shit. Don't take it seriously. Ethan let out an ambiguous chuckle. He took a sip of his Macallan, and his reply caught everyone off guard. Sure, you can have her. But Audrey only has eyes for me. I doubt she'd even look your way. The tension shattered. The lounge filled with laughter and backslapping again. His friends fell over themselves, complimenting him, Ethan Hayes, the powerful, handsome genius that women would kill to be with. It was only natural that I was madly in love with him. Standing just outside the velvet rope, I ran a hand through my hair. Then, my heels clicking on the marble floor, I pushed through the entrance. The motion caught their attention. Every head turned when they saw it was me. The chatter died instantly. I pretended not to notice, a bright smile fixed on my face as I walked toward their table. What? What are we all talking about? One of them recovered first, shifting awkwardly. Audrey, hey. How long have you been here? I slid into the plush leather booth next to Ethan, wrapping my arm around his. My smile was pure poison. Oh, about 5 minutes. I was just touching up my lipstick by the door. The color drained from their faces. No one dared to speak. I pulled my long hair back into a ponytail. Without a word, I reached across the table, grabbed a bottle of champagne, and calmly began to pour it over the heads of the two men who had been the most vocal. They were too afraid of Ethan to even flinch. When the bottle was empty, no one said a thing. One by one they mumbled excuses about early meetings and unfinished work, scattering from the lounge like cockroaches. Ethan leaned back against the leather, his expression unreadable. His voice was flat. "Are you done?" He thought I was just throwing a tantrum. I suppose that made sense. In Ethan's world, I was a pet, a perfectly trained, beautiful creature that came when called and purred on command. A pet that, without its owner, would be lost and starving on the streets. I found a seat across from him and said nothing. A second later, his phone buzzed. I couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but I saw the change in his posture. Ethan stood up abruptly, his voice softening as he headed for the exit. "Stay right there. I'm on my way." The tone was gentle, soothing. After he hung up, he was already at the door. Then he seemed to remember I was still there. He glanced back, his face blank. "Ma, you've been taking your pills, right?" So that was it. He was still worried I might try to trap him. What Ethan Hayes would never know was that while I was willing to play with a man like him, I would never, ever be foolish enough to carry his child. So I smiled and nodded, giving him the answer he wanted. "Of course." He left without another word. I let out a long, slow breath. A moment later, my own phone rang. It was Zoe. "Audrey, something came up at work. I can't get away. Can you swing by the clinic and pick up your prescription yourself?" "Yeah, no problem." Just before I hung up, a thought occurred to me. "Zoe, you don't have to get these for me anymore." There was a pause on the other end, then her voice, laced with fear. "Don't tell me you're actually thinking of having a baby with him. Audrey, for God's sake, get a grip." A real smile touched my lips this time. "No, it's not that." 2 days ago, my acceptance letter from NYU's graduate program had arrived. It was time for me to go back and finish my education. Besides, after 2 years of playing the part, I had skimmed over $30 million from Ethan Hayes. It was time to cash out and walk away. I just picked up the pills from the pharmacy inside the hospital when I turned a corner and ran straight into him. A delicate, beautiful girl was leaning against his chest. When Ethan stopped short, she looked up at him, her voice a sweet, childish pout. "Baby, what's wrong?" He didn't answer her. His eyes flicked over to me, then landed on the small paper bag in my hand. From his angle, he could clearly read the prescription label, contraceptive. A flicker of something, maybe guilt, crossed his face. Ethan's brow furrowed in a rare moment of concern. He actually said, "You should take less of that stuff. It's not good for you." I offered him a bland, pleasant smile. "Okay." I didn't let on that I knew him, and the girl in his arms was clearly clueless. But Ethan's brief moment of attention had set off her alarms. The girl stepped forward, possessively extending a manicured hand toward me. Her smile was sharp. "Hi, I'm Amelia, Ethan's girlfriend." I let those last 3 words sink in. Girlfriend. Then what was I? But Ethan gave me a subtle warning look. I took the hint and shook her hand. "Audrey. I've met Mr. Hayes a few times." Amelia visibly relaxed, her smile becoming genuine. She laughed, a light tinkling sound. "This one here has been running me ragged," she said, playfully swatting his arm. "My period is late, so we just wanted to come in and get it checked out." She looked at me expectantly. "What about you, Audrey? What brings you here?" I was about to invent a story when she cut me off, her eyes widening in realization. "Oh, you're here for birth control, aren't you? God, your boyfriend is such an ass. Why doesn't he just wear a condom? Those pills are so bad for your body." She shook her head, full of sympathy. "Listen, Audrey, if you can't get him to listen, you let me know. I'll have a word with him for you. A man who really loves you would never, ever want to see you get hurt." I stared at her hand on my arm for a second too long. Her manicure was immaculate, a soft blush pink that matched the gloss on her lips. The kind of girl Ethan's mother would approve of on sight. The kind of girl who believed in things like forever and meant to be and a man who really loves you. I gave her a small, polite smile and tucked the paper bag into my purse. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. "Thanks for the advice." Her eyes crinkled with genuine warmth. She glanced back at Ethan, who had drifted a few steps away to take a call, his hand pressed to his ear, profile sharp under the harsh hospital lighting. "Seriously," she went on. "If your guy doesn't treat you right, dump him. Life's too short to waste on someone who doesn't value you." I almost laughed. "If only you knew." A nurse called Amelia's name from the doorway that led deeper into the clinic. She squeezed my hand one last time and pulled away. "Come on, baby," she chirped, looping her arm through Ethan's. "Let's go see what kind of trouble we've gotten ourselves into." She said it like a joke. Ethan brushed a kiss over her hairline, the movement automatic, practiced. Then, for a fraction of a second, his eyes met mine over the top of her head. There was no apology there. No shame. Just calculation. Measuring how likely I was to cause a scene. Evaluating the risk I posed to his pretty little world. I smiled, slow and bland and empty, and gave him the smallest nod. "Not today." They disappeared down the hallway together, his arms still around her shoulders. I stood in the corridor, the fluorescent lights buzzing quietly overhead, the smell of antiseptic and coffee and panic hanging in the air. My fingers curled around the prescription bag. 2 days from now, I'd be in New York, walking past red brick buildings and people who didn't know my name. In 3 months, I'd be sitting in lecture halls with professors who cared about my ideas, not my last name. In 2 years, I would be someone Ethan Hayes couldn't even recognize. He had no idea I was already gone. Zoe was waiting for me in her office, a cluttered corner room off the research wing. Files and printouts covered every flat surface, and a whiteboard on the wall was crammed with chemical structures and acronyms. A coffee cup ring stained one corner, ghostly and brown. She looked up when I knocked, dark circles under her eyes. Her lab coat was half-buttoned over a silk blouse I'd seen her spill ramen on last week. "You look like hell," I said gently, dropping into the chair across from her desk. "Good afternoon to you too," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "Clinical trials are a special circle of hell. Did you get your prescription?" I slid the bag onto her desk. She eyed it with a frown. "About that," I said. "I'm not taking them anymore." Her head snapped up. "Audrey. We talked about this. You of all people cannot afford." "I'm not having his baby," I cut in. "That was never the plan." She studied my face, reading between the lines the way only someone who'd seen me drunk cry in a bathroom at 3 a.m. could. "What happened?" I hesitated, the images from the hallway flickering behind my eyes. Amelia's pretty mouth forming the word girlfriend. Her hand possessive on his arm. The way he hadn't even flinched when he saw me. "Nothing," I said finally. "Everything. It doesn't matter. I'm out." "Out," she repeated slowly. I leaned back in the chair and let my head fall against the wall, staring up at the water-stained ceiling. "My letter came," I reminded her. "NYU. I leave the day after tomorrow. The lease on my place is up in a month. I've lined up housing in Brooklyn. I accepted that part-time analyst position with Cole Capital. I'm done playing house with a man who doesn't know what he's sitting on." Zoe's brows drew together. "Doesn't know what he's sitting on as in the 30 million? I couldn't help it, my lips twitched. 32.7, I corrected. The market had a good week. She sat back, exhaling a low whistle. "You really did it," she murmured. "You actually pulled it off." "I didn't steal from him," I said quietly. "He gave me things that appreciated. I made them appreciate faster. That's all." She gave me a look. "Audrey, he bought you a Porsche and you sold it the next morning." "He bought me an asset that depreciates the second you drive it off the lot," I countered. "I traded it for ones that don't. It's not my fault he thinks leather seats are an investment." Zoe laughed, a quick, sharp sound that broke some of the tension in the room. Then her expression sobered. "And the pills?" she asked. "You're really done?" I stared at my hands. When she first told me about the male contraceptive trial, I'd felt something close to relief. A way to tilt the scales back in my favor without Ethan ever knowing. He didn't want condoms? He didn't want responsibility. He just wanted the rush, the power, the control. Fine. He could have all of that as long as I kept the outcome in my own hands. Now the thought of handing him another glass of water made my stomach turn. I'm done, I said. You said long-term use could cause irreversible damage. I said it might, she corrected softly. We don't have enough data yet. That's not better, Zoe. Her mouth pressed into a line. You're not a monster, you know, she said. You did what you needed to do to protect yourself in a situation where he held all the cards. If you were a man, nobody would question it. I thought of Amelia's laugh echoing down the corridor. My period is late. We just wanted to get it checked out. My chest tightened. He's been with her for at least a month, I said. Probably longer. Zoe's eyes flashed. And he's still been sleeping with you? Not in the last 2 weeks, I said. I've been busy. Busy lining up movers, signing documents, moving funds into accounts only I could access. Busy making sure that if Ethan ever did decide to come for me, he'd find nothing but dust and an forwarding address to a city he didn't control. You're leaving, Zoe said. You'll be on the other side of the country. In a different orbit. He can't touch you there. I nodded. That's the plan? She watched me for a moment. And if he finds out about the pills? He won't, I said. You've covered your tracks. I've covered mine. As far as anyone knows, I'm just another girl who made the responsible choice to not bring a child into a world where its father is Ethan Hayes. Zoe snorted. On behalf of the world, she said dryly, thank you. I smiled faintly. On my way out, I paused with my hand on her doorframe. Hey, Zoe? Yeah? If, and it's a big if, that girl ends up pregnant. Will your drug have done anything to him? To the baby? She blinked, caught off guard. The oral contraceptive we developed is designed to inhibit spermatogenesis temporarily, she said automatically, slipping into scientist mode. If he stopped taking it a few months ago, his sperm count might still be recovering, but any embryo that actually implants shouldn't be affected. We screened aggressively for teratogenicity. The bigger concern is the long-term impact on his own fertility if he abuses the dosage. If, I repeated. That's why I told you to cycle him off after 3 months, she added, a hint of reproach in her voice. You kept going for 6. I know, I said. I was scared. We let that sit between us, a small, heavy truth. Zoe sighed. Look. Go to New York. Start your program. Work your analyst job. Date a nice, emotionally available man who doesn't think latex is a personal insult. In 5 years, you'll forget Ethan Hayes ever existed. I wanted to believe her. I'll send you pictures of snow, I said. You'd better. I left the hospital with my prescription still unopened, the bottle rattling softly in my bag like a ghost. Ethan showed up at my apartment that night. He never came to my place unannounced. He liked neutral spaces, hotels, private lounges, his car. Places where he could vanish, where nothing had my name on the lease or the deed. Places where I would be the one arriving, the one waiting. I had just finished taping up the last cardboard box when his code flashed on my intercom. Who is it? I asked, even though I already knew. The silence on the other end, the faint background hum of a high-rise elevator. It all felt familiar. It's me, he said. No hello. No question. Just an expectation that doors opened for him. My thumb hovered over the buzzer for a heartbeat, then I pressed it. By the time he reached my floor, I had composed my face into something neutral. Not adoring. Not hostile. Just blank. He stepped into my apartment and stopped short, eyes sweeping over the stacked boxes, the bare walls where my art had once hung, the empty spot where the expensive Italian sofa he'd bought for us had been. You redecorated, he said slowly. I decluttered, I replied. Hi, Ethan. He looked at me, really looked, as if seeing me for the first time in months. My hair was up in a messy bun. I wore old jeans and a washed-out t-shirt, not the designer dresses he liked. My face was clean. No lipstick to smudge on his collar. Where is everything? He asked. In storage, I lied. Some of it. I'd sold the sofa, the glass dining table, the art he'd insisted on picking out himself, bold and abstract and meaningless. The watch he'd given me just because. The jewelry I'd never particularly liked. The Porsche had been the first to go, its sale paying off my student loans in one satisfying wire transfer. "Are you moving?" he asked, as if he didn't already know the answer. "Yes." "Where?" "New York." He laughed once, a disbelieving puff of air. "New York." I leaned back against a box, crossing my arms. "NYU accepted me into their graduate program," I said. "Finance. I start in a few weeks. I thought I told you." "You mentioned some application," he said dismissively. "I didn't realize you were serious." "About my education?" I asked. "I'm always serious about my education, Ethan. You're the one who thought it was cute to call me your little scholar and then ask me to skip class for breakfast at the Four Seasons." He stepped toward me, irritation flickering across his features. "You're being dramatic," he said. "You can study anywhere. Why would you run off to some crowded, filthy city where you don't know anyone when you have everything you need right here?" "Everything I need," I repeated slowly. He gestured vaguely around the half-empty apartment. "I bought you this place," he reminded me. His father's company had. Technically it was in a holding LLC's name, but Ethan loved taking credit for things other people signed. I had always found it ironic. "And you'll keep it," I said. "Consider it a tax-deductible lesson." His jaw tightened. "Is this about last night?" he demanded. "Because you poured champagne over a couple of idiots and now you're sulking because I left early? You know how important certain relationships are to my family. I can't always stay and hold your hand while you throw tantrums." "Is that what you think that was?" I asked quietly. "A tantrum?" He rolled his eyes. "They were joking," he said. "You know how guys are. You embarrassed them. You embarrassed me. And then you stormed off like some melodramatic teenager." "They weren't joking," I said. "And they weren't talking about a random woman. They were talking about me." "You're overreacting," he snapped. If I thought there was a real risk, I would have shut it down. I thought of his lazy, amused smirk as he'd handed me over to them in theory, secure in the belief that I would never, ever look at anyone but him. "Would you?" I asked. "Or would you have poured them another drink and told them how lucky you are to have me on a leash?" He flinched. "You're being ungrateful," he said. "Do you have any idea how many women would kill to be in your position? The house. The car. The access. My friends. My family." "Your family doesn't even know my last name," I said. "They call me that girl." "That's not true. Ethan, your mother introduced me at that charity gala as Ethan's friend. Then she asked me if I was still doing that little night school thing. I have 2 degrees. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "This isn't about my mother," he said finally. "This is about you trying to punish me because you're insecure." "Insecure," I repeated. "Is that what you told Amelia?" His expression froze. For the first time since he walked in, real fear flickered in his eyes. "Amelia?" he said, voice carefully blank. "Yes, Amelia," I said. "Your girlfriend." His hands clenched at his sides. "Who told you that?" "She did," I replied. "In the hospital, where you took her to check if she was pregnant. You remember? I was holding my own contraceptives while she told me what a man who really loves you would never do." Color drained from his face. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "Her father is a major investor. We're close. There are expectations. I was going to explain everything to you once things settled down." I stared at him. "You were going to explain that you've been using me as your personal crash test dummy while you auditioned a wife?" I asked. "That you've been sleeping with both of us without telling either one of us about the other? That you've been so terrified of being trapped with a baby that you made me poison myself instead?" He scoffed. "Poison?" he echoed. "You asked Zoe for those pills. Nobody forced you." I felt my pulse spike. "How do you know about Zoe?" I asked. He hesitated just a fraction of a second too long. I know everything that happens around me, he said. You should know that by now. Something clicked into place. Did you have me followed? I asked. He didn't answer. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Of course you did, I said. God forbid your pet have a life outside her gilded cage. Audrey, calm down, he said, stepping closer. You're blowing this out of proportion. I care about you. I've always taken care of you. But there are things you don't understand about my world. Responsibilities. Alliances. I can't just throw all of that away because you're having a crisis. I'm not having a crisis, I said. I'm having a revelation. He reached out and caught my wrist. Stop talking like that, he said softly. You're tired? You're stressed. You're making impulsive decisions. Moving to New York, quitting the life you have here, it's insane. You'll hate it. The weather. The rent. The people. You don't know anyone. You don't have anyone to protect you. I looked at his hand around my wrist, his fingers pressing into my skin. You're not my protector, I said. You're the thing I need protection from. His grip tightened. Don't be dramatic, he said, but there was an edge now. You think you can just walk away? After everything I've given you? After everything you know? You think my father will let that happen? There it was. The threat he'd never had to articulate before. I met his eyes. Your father doesn't scare me, I lied. He studied me for a long moment, weighing options. Then his expression smoothed. Fine, he said. Clearly, you need time. Cool off. Think this through. There's a charity event Friday night. The board will be there. My parents. Amelia's family. It would be good optics for you to be there too. We'll talk after, when you've calmed down. I'm not going, I said. He smiled thinly. Oh, you're going, he said. You owe me that much. That night, I barely slept. Not because of Ethan. Not because of Amelia. But because of the way his hand had felt on my wrist, and the realization that I had let that hand steer the course of my life for 2 years. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city hum outside my window. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed. A siren wailed in the distance. A car door slammed. At 3 a.m, the hour my brain loved to replay every mistake I'd ever made, I made a list. Not of his sins. Not of his friends' insults or his mother's condescension. Not of the nights I had swallowed my pride and my pills in equal measure. I made a list of what I wanted. No more hiding. No more half-truths. No more being the quiet, well-behaved girl who made herself small so others wouldn't feel threatened. And, I realized with a flicker of something like shame, no more playing God with anyone's body. Not even his. The male contraceptive had given me power in a system rigged against me, but it had also turned me into someone I barely recognized when I looked in the mirror. Someone who smiled sweetly while handing a man a pill that might or might not steal his future without his informed consent. I had let myself believe that because he didn't care about my body, I was justified in not caring about his. I wasn't. Zoe had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't not a monster because men did worse. I was not a monster because I was still capable of looking at what I'd done and choosing differently. Friday came anyway. The charity gala was held at a glass and steel monstrosity downtown, all glimmering chandeliers and waiters in starched shirts. A string quartet played tasteful background music while people in black tie attire pretended their champagne bubbles could keep their consciences afloat. I went. Not because I owed Ethan anything. But because I had decided that if this was going to be our last night in the same orbit, I would choose how it ended. I wore a simple black dress, not one he'd bought. My hair was loose around my shoulders. No diamonds. No visible logos. Just me. Ethan found me by the bar, as I knew he would. You look beautiful, he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. His cologne enveloped me, familiar and cloying. Thanks, I said, stepping back. Amelia was on his arm, glowing in a pale blue gown that made her look like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright. There was a tremor in her hand as she smoothed a non-existent wrinkle from her dress. Hey, Audrey, she said. I'm so glad you came. Of course, I said. Big night? Her smile faltered. We got the results, she said quietly. My heart stuttered. And? I asked. Her fingers tightened on Ethan's sleeve. It was a false alarm, she said. I'm not pregnant. Relief washed through me, so strong it made my knees weak. Congratulations, I said lightly, because what else was there to say? She laughed shakily. Yeah. I mean. We were both a little disappointed, honestly, but the doctor said we have plenty of time. Her gaze slid toward Ethan's face, searching. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes a little too bright. He wants a big family, she added softly. Boys. Girls. The whole legacy thing. I swallowed. That sounds nice, I said. Ethan's fingers dug into the small of her back. Amelia, he said smoothly, why don't you go say hello to your parents? I need to discuss something with Audrey. She frowned, but after a moment she nodded and drifted away into the crowd. He waited until she was out of earshot before turning back to me. Happy now? He hissed. I blinked. What? You wanted to know if your little science experiment worked, he said. Well, congratulations. The doctor thinks my sperm count is concerningly low for a man my age. Their words. He tossed back the rest of his drink, throat working. Maybe if you'd listened to Zoe, I said quietly. She told me to stop after 3 months. You kept pushing for more because you didn't want to risk it. He laughed bitterly. Of course you're going to blame me, he said. You and Zoe, always so righteous. You gave me the pills. You begged for them, I said. You refused every other option? He leaned in, his breath hot against my ear. If my father finds out you and your lab rat friend wrecked his air, he murmured, you won't make it to New York. Do you understand me? Fear licked at the base of my spine. For a moment, I could see it, my acceptance letter shredded, my accounts frozen, my carefully constructed escape plan crumbling under the weight of a family that had never once heard the word no. Then I remembered something Zoe had said on the phone that afternoon, her voice tight but triumphant. We finally unblinded some of the older data, she had told me. Audrey. The batch I gave you? It was part of the control group. Placebo. Sugar pills. Whatever's going on with him, it isn't us. I met Ethan's gaze, really met it, and felt something inside me go very, very still. You should talk to your doctor, I said calmly. Honestly. There are a lot of things that can affect fertility. Lifestyle. Stress. Other substances. His jaw clenched. I don't use anything, he snapped. That's not what your trainer told the guy from GQ when he thought I was just another bartender, I said. But sure. Keep telling yourself that if it helps you sleep. A flush crept up his neck. You think you're so clever, he snarled. Stacking the deck. Playing the victim. Skimming money behind my back. I tilted my head. Skimming? I echoed. Is that what you think I did? He sneered. You really believe I didn't notice? The watch. The car. The art. The way my gifts magically disappeared and somehow your portfolio blossomed overnight? You're not subtle, Audrey. You're a parasite with a pretty face. For a moment, the words stung. Then they didn't. You gave me those things, I said. Voluntarily. There were no strings attached except the ones in your head. And I didn't steal your money. I invested the proceeds from the gifts you chose. If anyone turned your generosity into something real, it was me. Semantics, he said. Documentation, I corrected. Every gift, every sale, every transfer, all above board. I hired a very expensive lawyer with one of your Christmas presents. He loved your taste in cufflinks, by the way. He blinked. You're lying. You can ask him yourself, I said. He's here tonight. Cole Capital sponsored a table. They manage. I smiled faintly. A portion of my portfolio now? Right on cue, a man in his late 30s approached the bar, dark suit tailored within an inch of its life. Nathan Cole had the kind of controlled presence that made you forget he wasn't the richest man in the room. Audrey, he said warmly. I thought that was you. I almost didn't recognize you without your laptop. I relaxed a fraction. Nathan, I said. Thanks again for the opportunity. He waved a hand. We don't offer positions we don't intend to fight over, he said. My partners are already arguing about who gets you on their team. Ethan's eyes narrowed. And you are? He asked. Nathan's gaze flicked to him, then back to me. He didn't offer his hand. A colleague, I said before he could answer. From New York? Ethan's jaw tightened at the word. New York, Nathan echoed, a hint of amusement in his voice. Where someone with your instincts belongs. That's the idea, I said. Nathan studied my face for a moment, sensing the tension. If you need anything, he said quietly, you have my number. I know, I said. Thank you. When he walked away, Ethan rounded on me. So that's it, he said. You're going to run off with some Wall Street shark and pretend you didn't claw your way up on my back. I didn't claw my way up on your back, I said. I climbed off it. His eyes flashed. You'll regret this, he hissed. Out there, you're nobody. Just another girl with a sob story and a decent brain. Here, you're mine. There it was. The truth he'd been circling all along. I was never yours, I said. He opened his mouth to retort, but the lights dimmed. A spotlight snapped on, illuminating the stage at the front of the hall. His father took the microphone, booming something about legacy and innovation and the bright future of Hayes Holdings. Ethan straightened automatically, tucking his jacket into place, torn between his fury at me and his need to perform. Go stand with Amelia, I said softly. Smile for the cameras. Pretend you're whole. Audrey. I'm not going to tell your secrets, I said. Not to your father. Not to Amelia. Not to anyone. Not because you deserve my silence. You don't. But because I'm tired of living inside your story. I'm ready to live inside my own. He stared at me, searching for the hook, the plea, the concession he could twist into leverage. He didn't find it. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he stepped back. You'll come crawling back, he said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. They always do. Maybe they do, I said. I don't. I left before the speeches ended. Outside, the air was cool, finally free of the cloying perfume and recycled jokes. I walked down the wide stone steps in my 2 high heels, one hand on the rail. The city spread out in front of me, lights blinking, taxis honking, 1,000 lives intersecting and diverging. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text from Zoe. Unblinded more data. You were on placebo the whole time. He did this to himself. I stopped on the sidewalk and laughed, the sound bubbling up unexpectedly. Of course he had. All this time, I had carried the guilt of what I might have done to him, the fear that my desperate grab at agency had broken something that could never be fixed. And in the end, his own arrogance had been the real poison. I typed back with numb fingers. Then maybe for once in his life, he'll have to live with the consequences of his own choices. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Finally, her reply came. Proud of you. Send me a picture when you get to New York. Another message popped up, this one from an unknown number. Nathan Cole? Board loved your case study. Offer still stands. Coffee when you land? For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like an obligation or a trap. It felt like a blank spreadsheet, columns waiting to be filled with numbers I chose. I looked back at the glittering building one last time. Somewhere inside, Ethan was standing beside a girl who had no idea yet how fragile the story she'd been sold really was. I couldn't save her. I wouldn't try. People like Amelia had to learn their own lessons, just like I had. But I had done one thing. Before leaving the gala, I had slipped an anonymous envelope into the clinic's outgoing mail bin, addressed to her. Inside was a copy of the consent form Ethan had signed for a supplement regimen with his trainer, the one Zoe's contact had quietly forwarded me. Stimulants. Steroids. Things no responsible doctor would pair with a desire for a big family. It wasn't revenge. It was information. What she did with it was up to her. I turned away from the lights and raised my hand for a cab. Where to? The driver asked when I slid into the back seat. Home, I said automatically, then paused. Wait, I added. Actually. To the airport. He shrugged, flicked on the meter, and pulled into traffic. As the city blurred past my window, I rested my forehead against the cool glass and let myself breathe. Of all the women Ethan Hayes had ever dated, I had been the good one. The obedient one. The quiet one who smiled and swallowed and made sure his pleasure never came with a price he didn't agree to. Now, finally, I was something else. I was the one who walked away. Somewhere between here and New York, between the girl I had been and the woman I was becoming, there was a life where my worth wasn't measured in gifts or in how tightly I clung to a man who didn't deserve me. I intended to find it.